way back in 1992 in India under the guidance of Yoga Chandra Dharmananda, who is one of the gurus in India who teaches astrology.
No,
And
he doesn't teach astrology. He's just a spiritual teacher.
oh, okay, wonderful. Good
Yeah.
to know. Awesome. So that did lead you into a spiritual path. Astrology is a very spiritual science, very spiritual field. And Kerry now practices as a Vedic astrologer in the United States. She's also a certified professional member of the Council for Vedic Astrology here. And she guides and motivates people to create health, joy, more understanding, deeper understanding of themselves and their lives, and joy and peace in their lives. And I happened to stumble upon Kerry's page, which is such a beautiful name. I love the name Planetary Influence. I saw it once and I read through her articles, and I have known a lot about astrology in the last few years. I've sort of taught myself. And I was impressed with the way you described the transiting planets, very different from the typical forecast that astrologers do. And I was blessed to even then take a session with Kerry. And the way you practice, Kerry, it really brings your voice, first of all, your calm voice brings it just relieves all the anxiety and stress that I have. And then you are very calm and a very supportive way. You know, mostly astrologers that I've come across are negative or they're very cut to cut on this is what's going to happen. It's either very negative or very positive. And I've found that you're very level headed and you were very, very calm and positive in giving me guidance, in encouraging and supporting me more than just telling me what's going to happen. So I have seen Kerry twice now, and I will encourage all of you to check out her page. But for now, let's talk some serious astrology related to Mother's Day. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you, Rima.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so the Mother's Day is tomorrow. And how do I relate that to astrology? Well, the said all of astrology is contained in the word hora, which is a Sanskrit word. So hora comes to aho ratri. So it's really day and night. So really
Right.
what it all boils down to is, in the end, is the sun and the moon. And that's a great way of starting to understand what is astrology all about. So the sun and the moon are planets, or well, the sun's technically a star, but
Mm.
we think of them as planets. So they're the ones we see every day. We can see them with our eyes, and they're always moving. That's paying attention to the heavenly bodies. And really, it's just another part of nature. And so it's something to pay attention to. And the moon is the planet we associated with the mother.
My favorite.
And
You know
your
why?
favorite. The moon is, and just like a mother, the moon is always there. And so, yes, tomorrow is Mother's Day in the United States. Mother's Day always comes on a Sunday, which is actually the sun's
Oh,
day.
right.
But I want to tell everybody that every single week there's a Mother's Day. Every Monday. Monday
That's
is the day of the moon. So I just, it's something I can tell people, that the moon is a planetary association. The good way to pay attention to the planets is to know those planetary associations with the days of the week, because in that way you can start connecting with the planetary energies just by acknowledging that Sunday is the day of the sun and Monday is the day of the moon. And like
right.
personally, every Monday I try to call my mother and just connect with her,
Really?
because that's,
Oh,
and I tell people, that's a way you can start honoring the planet's energy, is by just paying attention to the issues involved with that planet on that day of the week. So even though
right.
tomorrow is Mother's Day technically in the US, I encourage everybody to celebrate the mothers every Monday, because
That's a
that's the
great
moon's day.
start. I'd never thought of it that way. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
before we go further into the Mother's Day moon, and which is also the mind, so we'll be talking about mind and emotions. I wanted you to share with so many. It was surprising to me when so many Indians, originally where Vedic astrology was born, don't even know what astrology, the word Jyotishi, stands for. So if you want to start off, how did you get inspired to go to India or seek this kind of knowledge, and what brought you here, this whole journey?
Oh, wow. That's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. um, I ended up in India really because I got kicked out of Nepal.
Oh,
the, the,
oh, what does
this
that
was
mean?
back in 1992. I was traveling in Nepal, and it was just always hard to get a visa. So the problem came up with my visa. I suddenly had to leave, and my friend was going from Kathmandu to Delhi. So I
Hmm.
joined up with her, and we ended up traveling for a few months in India. So I arrived in Rishikesh just at the beginning of December 1992 and
Hmm.
stumbled upon an ashram called Vednikatandam. And that's where Swamiji Dharmananda was manager at the time. And he was starting a 1 month course in Vedic studies. Perfect, because I got to join in with that. And so there wasn't so much Jyotish. I didn't even know about Jyotish at that time, but just
Okay.
got the foundational ideas about Vedic knowledge. And that was 1992. And then I think it was about 1996 or so, 1997, that my friend gave me some recordings, audio recordings of Dr. David Frawley speaking at one of the first Jyotish conferences in the United States. And I had just gotten his book, Astrology of the Seers, because that was, I don't know, for some reason I was interested in astrology. And I just found out that there was Vedic astrology and Western astrology.
Right. I didn't know that 5 years ago.
Yeah, so
I,
in a
I
lot of,
knew I knew Indian astrology, since I think it's for me, it started when we were frantically looking for a life partner for my sister and nothing seemed to work. And that's when I wanted hope. But when I came here, it's 5 years ago, I realized Western astrology is different from Indian in some ways.
so yeah, there's differences, but there's similarities. So,
Right.
and the main difference that made me go down the path toward Vedic astrology versus Western astrology is the zodiac that's used.
Hmm.
So everybody, I mean, hopefully everybody looks up at the sky from time to time instead of their phones. But there's actually constellations in the sky that 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 we see all the time. And the ancient people who didn't have electric lights and all of this, I mean, there was much more interaction with the nature and the planets in the sky at that time. And so the constellations, which are groups of stars that exist in space,
Right.
were named and given natures, and the whole system of astrology was created from that. And um, what I like about Vedic astrology is that they're actually using the observable constellations and how the planets are traveling through them, um, which seems like that's how it should be, right?
And we had been to Flagstaff a few years ago. It's one of the oldest observatory in the United States, or I don't know if it's in the world, but I know in the United States, they have the biggest and oldest observatory there. And we were looking at the moon, and I met a very senior astronomer. And in talking with me in conversation, here's what he told me. He told me that astronomy was born from Indian astrology. And I did not go back and read the facts around that, but that's what he said. He said astronomy was inspired by ancient Indian astrology. So that was just fascinating for me to hear.
I'm not surprised that he said that. That's very cool. Um, So what's happened is that in observing the planets and the stars all throughout human history, let's say, um, India, the Vedic culture, began to do it a long time and has done it continually for thousands of years. So
Yes.
because of that continuous observation, they discerned that there was a very long cycle that happened that was about 24,000 years
Mm.
that slightly changed the constellation where the let's say the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, would happen. And so it was such a small amount of change that it would be hard to detect it in one person's lifetime. But because of a
Mm.
continuous observation, they discerned this cycle. So what happened, I think, where the Western and Vedic astrologies diverged, I think it happened because of the Dark Ages in Europe. So around 500 AD, everything changed in Europe. We had about 1,000 years of what they call the Dark Ages. And then in about 1500, there's the Renaissance, and things started moving again. But so the astrology wasn't continuous in Europe from that time. So I think what happened was they sort of took the old astrology books from 1,000 years before and said, oh, look, the vernal equinox happens when the sun gets to 1 degree of the sign of Aries.
So let me ask you, in that
Mm-hmm.
case, the 23-degree difference between
Mm-hmm.
Indian and Western astrology, and when we are correlating that to astronomy in the sky, when astronomers are talking about the transits, in your understanding or knowledge, have you found that difference where Indian astrology coincides with the planetary transitions in the sky? Because I would assume that's what it is.
Oh, it's exactly the same.
And it's in Western, there's that slight difference that you're talking about with,
Yeah. So
right.
there's two zodiacs basically that we're using. So there's the sidereal zodiac, and that's spelled
Mm-hmm.
Sidereal, sidereal zodiac. That
Right.
is consistent with the observable astronomical zodiac. I mean, there's
Right.
literal constellations out there, there's planets moving through them.
Right. Right.
That most Vedic astrologers use. And then there's what we call the tropical zodiac, which developed around the system of Western astrology. So it's called the
Right.
tropics because, well, they're just basically using the seasons as the zodiacal markers. So actually, when somebody who says they read in the newspaper and says, "Oh, look, my dates say that the sun is in Pisces when I'm born," when they give a date range. Well,
Right.
the literal sun is not in the literal constellation of Pisces anymore. It's more of
Right.
a it's become more of a seasonal thing. And it's not to say that Western astrology doesn't have validity. There's obvious, I mean, the relationships between the planets are still similar. It's just
Right.
that Western astrology is seeing those planets in sort of a theoretical constellation. It's not a literal stars of Aries or Pisces that it's seeing it in. So anyway, that was really what pushed me toward the Vedic way of doing it, was that astronomically correct zodiac.
And I've been surprised at how many astrologers in the United States are practicing Indian Vedic astrology.
There's a lot. Yeah, it's becoming
More and more
more and
popular.
more popular. Yeah. And,
Right.
you know, some of the earliest, I would say, uh, standard bearers of Vedic astrology in the United States were Indians that came, like beloved Chakrapani Ulal, who passed away last fall. You know, people like that, and Dr. David Frawley, who was American but went to India to study. So we have a lot of, you know, starting in probably the 70s, 80s, 90s,
Right.
those first people to bring it were
So
just
if we
starting
were
then.
to jump forward a little bit, I'm very excited for you to share what Jyotish actually means. I don't want to do it because you have a better way to convey it to the. It's totally your arena, so please share that.
Um, so yours when you talk, I'm hearing it very delayed. So I'm just going to repeat your
Oh,
question so I make sure I understand. But you're asking, what does Jyotish mean? Is that right?
yes, yes,
Okay. So the word Jyoti just means light. So
right,
the Jyotish is really just someone who is studying light or bringing light.
right,
You could say that the practice of Jyotish is for turning on a light for things that we don't understand. Why is this happening? When is this happening? We have all these questions. We feel like we're in the dark. We don't understand. So the idea is that Jyotish itself is taking is a source of light to try to illuminate the details of lives for people so that they can make better decisions or move
right,
forward in their life or just simply understand why.
right. Yeah, there is a slight delay. I think we lost you for a few seconds, but I think you're back.
Okay. Should
Yeah.
I repeat that, Jyotish? I'm just saying Jyoti is a Sanskrit word that means light.
Yeah. No, we got that. I think we got
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. I wanted the audience to hear it from you.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again?
I
There is a
wanted the
delay.
audience to hear it from you. It
Oh,
means illuminating your soul with true knowledge
yeah.
and sparking that in your life through different areas of your life. Because astrology,
Yeah.
many people don't get. It's such a great way to get guidance, true guidance for our soul and for our life purpose.
That's the idea, is that it allows, and when it's interesting, Jyotish in America or in the West, let's say, most of us Vedic astrologers in the West are using the Kundali. We say the wheel or the chart, or
Right.
which the
Yeah.
chart is basically just a mapping of where all the planets were relative to one another and to the constellations and to your
Mhm.
birthplace,
Right.
and that acts as a map of your karma. What are you supposed to experience in this life, and when, and with whom, and how will it be? But there's other ways of doing Jyotish. Like there's Hasta Jyotish, which is the idea of reading the palm.
Yes. Yes.
So a lot of my Nepali friends, for example, when I say I'm a Jyotish, they throw their hand out at me and tell me,
You'll be
say,
like, I
what
have
do I,
no clue.
yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a clue. I just haven't studied Hasta Jyotish that much. But basically, this is our chart right here. Like, if you
Yes.
don't have a chart or, to
I
a
have
proper
a friend's
Jyotish,
dad.
yeah,
He's from India. He'll be coming on my channel, and he was amazing. He saw my hand. I was amazed at what he could tell me. So, and one of my astrologers in the past, he would look at the forehead, the facial features by my face cut, and he would tell me characteristics about me. So, yeah, it's such a
exactly.
broad field, umbrella.
Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of different tools that people can use to find that light. Um,
Right.
some people don't even need a hand or a chart. They maybe just have psychic abilities and they can tell,
Yes.
So, but I'm the one who uses the charts. I like to look at the charts and discern from that. So,
I love the way you do your calculations. Those of you who have some knowledge of astrology, so far, all the astrologers I've met have been using the Vimshottari chart for Mahadashas. And Kerry was the first person to introduce me to what is it called again? Um,
Narayana
the
Dasha.
Narayani Dasha. And then when she would explain, since I understand astrology, when she would explain me all the combinations of why this and why at this time of your life, it made so much more sense. It was especially the spousal, explanation that you had given me. It totally was a new light. in my knowledge, and yeah.
Well, within Jyotish, there's so many tools. Even just Kundali Jyotish. I mean, we have all these dasha systems. Most of us use the Vimshottari dasha. It seems to me so accurate. And, you know, for people who are new to Jyotish, when I started saying, oh, did this happen at that time and this and that, they think it feels like magic to them. But really, it's just me reading the chart using the techniques that I know.
Right.
And Vimshottari is a popular dasha. Dasha means period, basically, for those who don't know that word. And there's a lot of different ones, and they can be used for different things. So the Vimshottari dasha actually relates to the moon.
Let's talk
Circling
about
back
it
to the
now.
moon.
Yes,
So
yes.
the moon, like, you know, with the mother, the moon is also a representative of our mind and our state of mind and our emotions and how are we feeling and how are we reacting to what's happening in the world.
Right.
So the way the Vimshottari dasha is calculated, Vimshottari means 120 year. So this is a 120-year period.
That's
So the
the
way it's
max
calculated,
lifetime a human can live in the current time periods. From
yes,
yeah, as per
right.
ancient Indian knowledge is what I'm sharing. Yeah,
Yes, it's true. Actually, at this point, in few of us live that long.
yeah,
You know,
few
it's
right.
but maybe as we evolve a little bit better, we'll live to be longer. But this is one way people can escape difficult periods, is not living long enough to have them.
I like
um,
that. Right.
so the we each of us has a moon position in our chart. So when we're born, the moon is in some kind of phase. It's in some kind of constellation. It's either waxing or it's waning, and it's sitting in one of the constellations that we're familiar with, like Aries, Taurus, all of those signs. I'm saying them in English, but they're the same signs that we consider
Right.
in Vedic astrology. Um, and you could think of those 12 signs being like a wheel, a whole disc of 360 degrees. And then within those signs that we talk about, like Taurus and Pisces and Aries, we have another way of dividing that whole space into what we call the lunar mansions. So they're the moon's domains, and they overlap the signs, which are really the sun's domains. So the sun itself will travel through 12 signs, every one of them per year. And then the moon also travels through those same spaces in 1 month. And every day, the moon goes into one section, that whole circle. And we call those the lunar mansions, or nakshatras. So the nakshatras are what tell us how our planetary periods are going. So really, the Vimshottari dasha is based on our moon position.
Right.
And we can, when I use that, when I'm looking at somebody's chart, it's really like how that person is perceiving what's going on in their life. How are they reacting to it? How is the moon within them reflecting the activity that they're doing, or what they're experiencing in their life right then? So, as it turns out, those predictions that come through the Vimshottari dasha get to be very surprisingly accurate for
I
people.
can tell. I don't mind sharing. I'm so happy my Saturn Dasha has gone. I am really, I don't know why. Oh my God. It was a 19-year period of so much struggle. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Saturn can be very taxing on people. It's one of those planets that's sort of the taskmaster of them, that keeps us in line and makes sure we have to pay our debts and do our burdens. And
Right.
but look, you made it through, and look how strong you are.
I wouldn't have been doing this interview if I did not have that 19-year period.
You wouldn't have what?
I wouldn't be doing this interview with so much
Exactly.
confidence if I did not have all the harshness of Saturn.
Yeah.
Or training, I should say. Yeah. And so
Some of
just for,
us exempt.
we lost you a little bit there. Yeah.
That's okay. Are you there?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I was just saying none of us is exempt from a little bit of trouble in our life. You know, there's something about those hard periods of time that are unpleasant in the moment, but they cause us to dig in and really grow and become stronger.
So what can you share with us about the feminine energy or the mother energy in terms of the moon? You know, there are so many people who come to astrology because we feel disturbed in our mind, of course, with what's going on in life. And while I find people turn to the moonstone and think of that as the ultimate remedy, we know that that's just a relief or a support in some ways.
So which remedy were you talking about?
The moonstone, I've seen
Oh,
so
for the
many
moon.
people where, yeah, just whatever you'd like to share about moon and mother energy, or, what do you see in your clients? How do you guide them?
Sure. Well, the moon is not the same for every person. Every chart and so for each of us is a different way of relating to the moon and our mothers and all of that. So in addition to the moon being in a certain sign and a certain nakshatra, the moon, as we all know, it waxes and wanes every month. It gets full, it gets new. So we also have to see, what state is this moon in one's chart, because that tells us a lot about how are we going to weather the difficulties of life, how happy are we going to be, what kind of emotional reactions might we have to certain situations, and things about Vedic astrology that's a little different from Western astrology is there's a lot of remedial measures that are offered. So
Right.
the idea is that if we can look in our chart and say, oh my goodness, that moon is in a hard place in this chart because of, Saturn with it or some other difficulty. The idea is to relieve or strengthen those planets that are under duress so that we can be more calm, more peaceful, have a more level-headed approach to life. So,
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
And that brings me to a thank you for sharing that. Because here's what I wanted the audience to know. Many of us, and me way back several years ago, would think that I am doomed to the chart that I have. Basically, that I'm a slave of the, horoscope that I have, and that's how my life is going to be. Whereas it's the other way around. I had pre-decided what kind of life my soul had decided it would want to take in this body, it would want to experience, and the chart is just a shadow, or even the position of the moon. So I like that you said, how will the individual respond to the different weathers in their life? Because it's the individual that matters. In the same situation, two people would have a completely different response.
Yes, and something that makes me a little sad when I hear people saying about astrology or discussing their horoscopes is they might say, well, I'm just this way because of this position in my horoscope. And it
Yes,
becomes an excuse.
right.
And I don't really think we should use astrology for that reason. So the way I think of it is kind of like we have a journey in life. We're
Mm,
born, we walk around the earth, we pass away. So this
right.
is a journey. This experience is a journey. So our birth chart or horoscope is like the map. It's a plan. It's a blueprint that our soul has come in to experience these things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then let the shot system goes.
Yeah, I think you frozen and you should be back in a second. So, CJ, thank you for asking your question. Does the moon play a bigger role for some? I'm sorry you were frozen for a little bit, Kerry, and I think you're back
Oh,
now.
that's okay. I'll just recap what I said was like our birth is like a of in life. Those periods that we were talking about, like the Vimshotri Dasha, that's like the itinerary. When are we going to visit this place, or when is this experience going to happen? And then we have weather, which can come in all kinds of forms.
Right,
Like the current transits of the planets are like weather. Um, the country we live in is like weather. All these outside circumstances that may
factors.
modify. Yeah.
Right,
So the idea is that we have these tools. We have the map, we have the itinerary, we have the weather. Just because the weather says it's going to rain, does that mean we're not going to leave our house? No, we just have to prepare ourselves. We have to put an
right.
umbrella or a jacket or something like that. So that's the idea of astrology is, oh, how can I prepare for the next few years? What's the weather going to be like? What's going to be easy, what's going to be difficult, should I go to school, should I have a child, these things, these are the questions we can answer by
And what
looking
a
at the chart.
freeing thought. I love the way you explain that. That's such a freeing thought that we're not at the mercy of the combinations or, the possible outcomes we're going to get, but just to prepare ourselves and build more immunity, internal immunity to what's to come. And, I have used that. I'm glad that I've learned astrology. For example, just as an example for viewers, if you would like to relate, is I know now, and Kerry, from my chart, for the next 2 years, work is going to be heavy. My workload is going to be really heavy. And so the past 2 years, some people, I had great opportunities that I could have taken. And some people said, why, when you're having financial struggles, why did you not take those opportunities? It's because I wanted to spend time with my daughter when I know for the next few years I won't have that. So it's such an advantage if we were to use it in the right way.
Yes, and there's a big sort of philosophical thing to think about with free will. And some not everybody agrees. Do we have free will? If you look at this horoscope and say, and this is the schedule, and these things are going to happen, where does free will come in with that?
Right.
And this is a science of karma and studying karma, and there's different kinds of karma. I won't go into the details, but there's kind of like, you can look in the chart and say, oh my goodness, they're going to have to suffer through this, they're going to have to uh, deal with this type of karma. But this other one over here, they can have some free will, they have some action, they can modify some things. To me, if there was no way to change things, there would be no point of having astrology.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So the idea is to work with those planetary energies, to start understanding them and how they work for one individual person. And when I work with people, I have a very educational approach to things. Um, I like to, I like people to understand the archetypes, like the moon as the mother or the queen or the goddess, and the sun as the father or the king or the leader. Um, because really those planets kind of have these personalities. And as it turns out, they're all inside of us. We're just different combinations of those ingredients, you know.
Right. So, Kerry, we have a great question from relating to what you just said. A great
Okay.
question from one of our viewers, CJ. She asks, does the moon play a bigger role for some signs versus others?
Does the moon play a bigger role? I'm sorry, for some signs than others? Oh, absolutely. Each of the planets has a different way of expressing for each person. So, for example, each of the planets has a sign that it's related with, and we say that it rules.
You
So
can
the
give
sign
an
of
example if you need to, if that applies here. I
well,
think that's more tangible for the reader.
like the moon is for the sign of Cancer. Okay, the sign of Cancer. Rima has a Cancer ascendant.
Which is
So,
not the zodiac sign, which is not the typical sun sign that you hear.
right,
Right.
right. So there's different, you know, Western astrology, or what you might see in the newspaper, is really focused. We call that sun sign astrology, because it's saying your sun was in that sign when you were born. Vedic astrology thinks the sun is very important, obviously, but the moon sign becomes much more important, really, in Vedic astrology, in my opinion. So, and for certain charts, the moon is going to become a different role. For example, for Cancer ascendant, that means when Rima was born, the sign of Cancer was ascending or rising at the eastern horizon. So that's when we're saying rising sign, ascendant sign, first house of the chart. All of that is the same, synonymous.
Right.
So for somebody who's a Cancer rising, like Rima, the moon, who's the ruler of Cancer, becomes extremely important, because the moon becomes a representative of her body, her personality, how people are going to see her. And
And
so,
those of my friends who know me, they know, like I tell them it's my need to nurture other people. You know, they say you're so caring, or I'm such a good host, but truly it's my inner need. If I don't do that, like being a Cancerian, that fulfills me, you know?
exactly. Yeah.
So that's how it defines, the ascendant rising sign defines our personality so deeply.
So yes, the moon becomes extremely important for Cancer. And so somebody who has a prominent moon, let's say in their chart, because they have Cancer rising, or maybe they have moon in the first house, or they're born in a full moon or something where that makes their moon very strong. It's easy for me to say, oh, well, it probably comforts you to feed people and to be mothering and to nurture, and so that could be. And somebody who has, let's say, a less prominent moon, maybe they have a moon that's sort of under fire from Mars and Saturn, and they may not have the ability to nurture people. They may
Right.
be people who need to be nurtured more, so
Right.
yeah, certainly the moon itself plays a different role for each chart or each person, and so do all the other planets.
Right.
Yeah.
And then astrology is so good about, the other thing that I like is, especially when I remember a long back when I was counseling a student, I just graduated, and some parents just can't see anything good in their child. They would be like, they would have questions like, does my child have anything good in him? And it would just shock me to think that there can be parents, who truly have such strong beliefs about their children. But astrology can be a great medium to bring out that strength by looking at a chart that may not be obvious, talents and strengths that may not be obvious, even to maybe parents or family members. And you can look at a chart and say, here's the direction for studies or for career or for, artistic talents, hobbies that your child, right? You can definitely.
Yes, I mean, to bring back the mother theme, um, I think that astrology is great for mothers because of that, because it helps give a little bit more insight into their children and what their children might be needing at this specific time, even. I can look at a chart of a child and say, oh, maybe you could give this child some artistic things, or maybe they'd be very good at building.
Ooh, we just lost Kerry there. Okay, so Kerry but I think she might be having some internet problems. She got logged off. So while we wait for her to log back in, I am just sharing with you. We were talking about how astrology can be great for parents and for mothers to use in understanding at any given point of your life. What direction can your child receive? What is the direction that you can put your energies in to nurturing your child? Especially for if you find that your child is emotionally struggling, academically struggling, not showing the enthusiasm, cooperation that your child that you may be wanting your child to show, then that's a great time to go to an astrologer and say, what are we missing? What can you tell us? And sometimes I've found that children don't enjoy doing some of the classes that we ask them to do or push them into. And you can use astrology to see that over the years, starting now, what is a great class to focus on? Training, personal training. What kind of personal training does my child need to do? More of sports, more of art, what kind of art? Performing arts, fine arts. What subjects can my child focus on, so that I am preparing him or her for the future career, for the future, whatever life direction that your child is going to have. And in that case, I would think that even for special needs children, we can see in astrology from the chart, with certain combinations, you can tell that this child would be having special needs academically, behaviorally, or physically, will be challenged in certain ways. And yet use the chart to find out what are the unique talents that this person. So for example, my special needs student, you might find that in many ways he's lacking academically, but he has excellent artistic abilities, just pure excellent. And on the computer, he's got the fastest typing speed that I have seen. So there's always, it's disheartening when parents come and say, or they think and they feel that their child is really lacking in many ways. Make use of astrology. Kerry is a great astrologer. If you would like to take sessions from her, here is her link, Planetary Influence. I'm still waiting for Kerry, we are not able to see you. So let me send her a message and see where she's at. In the meanwhile, I will be welcoming questions from the audience. Yes, CJ, thank you for sharing. I understand, all of us who work with children. So CJ says that she's a case manager. She was a case manager. There are parents that way. Yeah, there are many. So Kerry's here again. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, can you see me again?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I could see you that whole time. Is my camera okay? Can you see my face?
If you want to pull it down a little bit, we can see more of the top of you. Yeah.
How's that? Good?
A little more further down. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So from mine, I can see my mouth. So, okay, I'm relying on you. Yeah, I was in there. I was listening to everything you said. It was great. Regarding how you can use astrology to help understand as a parent, what does my kid need right now? What would be a good field for them to go toward? How are they going to be with other kids? Is there issues with siblings? All kinds of things we can see like that. And I think it's very helpful. I was doing a reading recently for a woman, and after a little while, I said, "Well, could I see the chart of your child? Because, it might give me a little bit more insight about what you should be doing too." And when I saw the chart of the child, I thought, okay, I'm absolutely sure what I just told you should be on that track, because now that I've seen the chart of the child, I see you really need to support them at this time. So yeah, and I love doing readings for families, like when I can see the chart of everybody in the family. It's amazing, actually.
Like, even when Kerry recently saw my daughter's chart as well. And my daughter is very artistically driven, and she has some great, amazing abilities in certain ways. But in sports and athletics, it's not, her internal motivation is not there. And it was very helpful for you to tell me that she will thank you after a certain year, because we push her into martial arts and she wants to do it, she doesn't want to do it. And as parents, even though we know we want her to do it, there can be there was a doubt in my mind. I'm like, am I pushing her too hard? Maybe, like, I'm making her do something that's going to make her resentful. And it was very helpful for you to say that no, please continue doing that.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that was helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be a
have
great tool for helping with kids, or just, a lot of parents, it's just so hard to, as you know, it's hard to get it all done and to have a job and to be with your kids and have enough time for everything. Um, and sort of astrology can sometimes say like, okay, yeah, I can see why it's hard right now, but just, 3 more years of this, and you know, then things might shift for you or the child, and this tough spot might get over. A lot of people feel very comforted just to know that this is a temporary period
Mm.
of time,
Mm. Right.
and and it bolsters them and allows them to say, all right, I can buckle
Yes.
down and make
Right.
this work, and actually even learn something from it, as long as I know it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Kerry, I am glad that there are people in our audience who have some questions. So one of the questions that CJ asked two more questions. One of them is, I sometimes like to deviate from plans. How can I do that astrologically speaking? I'm not
She likes
sure.
to,
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand her question. Maybe it will make more sense to you. She says, I sometimes like to deviate from plans. How can I do that astrologically speaking? Do
okay,
you
I'm
think?
going to look on my computer for these questions because I'm having trouble.
Okay.
Okay.
Or another,
If you want to repeat that question, that's fine.
yeah, how about let me just type it over here and put it on the screen. Maybe you'll be able to see it. And then she also asks, how can couples benefit from astrology? So if you would be able to talk a little bit about astrology.
Oh wow, couples are great. How can couples? I mean, it's to understand yourself is a big help,
It's a blessing,
and
actually.
yeah, to understand why things are going the way they are and what you want and what's difficult for you, and then to also understand that what is your partner's difficulty, what are their main motivations, what are their strengths. um, so trying to get that out on the table in a very practical way, and just understanding um, what our shortcomings and strengths are and how they interact with the other person's,
Right.
and and sort of seeing those planetary periods lining up, and realizing that sometimes two people might be on the same path or the same page, and then other times they might diverge a little bit and need to do their own things and maybe come back together again. Relationship astrology is a very helpful tool.
Right. Yeah.
And Vedic astrology is used pretty extensively for marriage matching.
Yeah.
In a very traditional way, it was like kind of, the matchmaker thing, where the two, uh, man and woman, were sort of put together by the astrologers. The village astrologer would be the one to say, okay, this boy should be with this girl because of their charts. I'm not so sure I'd want that responsibility myself, but but I mean, that was one of the original uses for astrology, was
So,
matching
even when
people.
I got married, they traditionally we do the gunang, the matching of the points. But something that I learned in the last few years when I was actually digging deep into real astrology is certain ancient Indian astrologers talk about matching the moon signs, because the moon is the mind and the emotions. And that's basically what you're sharing most deeply with your companion. And then they talk about seeing how far the girl's moon is from the boy's moon, because the further away it is, it'll that much harder is for the man to understand the emotions of the wife and cater to those emotions. So I don't
Yeah,
want to go into a lot of depth, but that's just something I want, since we're talking about moon and moon energy.
there's a whole system of calculating points of compatibility between two moons, like you're talking about.
Oh,
And yeah, there's this whole kuta point system, where you analyze all these factors, and then you get this sort of one number that's the compatibility, which I think is useful. But I think if it was the only way that two people were being matched, that could be very sad. Because charts have so much more depth to them than just the moon. But I think on a certain level, in old times when there wasn't clocks all the time, we at least knew what the moon position was when somebody was born. So I think that's why traditionally it was used. Now we have clocks and we have a better way, like we can calculate a chart in 1 second if we have the right program, whereas it would take hours to really calculate a chart back in the day. So now we have much more extra information that we can use for compatibility
Right.
than just that traditional Kuta point system. It's worth looking at it, and it's good to understand. Why should we have the moon closer to each other? There's a whole other thing of having, you want the man's moon in front of the woman's moon. There's all these things
Right.
that go into the calculation. So
This is what understanding of astrology has helped me in terms of intimate relationships. It has helped me gain acceptance for what I might. So let's say if now having more greater understanding of why I'm not compatible with somebody, why there are problems with whatever, like why should I do business on my own and not have a partner? A legal partner, because it brings me to a point of understanding and acceptance of this is my personality, and that's why I'm going to gel with certain kinds of people and not other kind of people, instead of having resentment or confusion. In that sense, I would think relationship astrology would be great in understanding what are each of your strengths and limitations, and let's get some, coaching or acceptance and attitude difference and change in attitude around that.
yeah, I mean, because sometimes we'll find a chart where somebody's very independent person, but just because they're independent doesn't mean they don't want to have a relationship. But trying to understand that maybe that independence pushes somebody toward a more open relationship, or something where each person has their own sort of individual path, but they walk side by side on, doing it. Maybe they're not working together or even living together, but they're still having a relationship. So it's good to understand what you're capable of and what you can give to a relationship, and also what's missing in your life and what do you really need to receive from a relationship. Yeah,
Right.
these are things we can understand from looking at the chart.
And in India, so my name, Rima, the letter R is as per my moon sign. So in India, not that it's followed so much now, some of us still do. I believe in it. So we give our names based on the moon sign. When a child is born, we don't pre-decide the name, because based on the time of the birth and the moon sign, the moon's transitioning position, we give the name. We just believe it's auspicious.
Yes. So, yeah, each of these, when I was talking about the nakshatras, the lunar mansions,
Mhm.
each one of those nakshatras is divided into 4 sections. And each of
Right.
those 4 sections has a letter or a syllable associated with it. And so, based on that, you name the child with
Right.
those letters, so that in a sense, their moon is being uh, supported every time their name is said.
Oh, now I understand why. Great. Thank you.
So maybe in a sense it calm if I say ra 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 ra, because of the syllable, that maybe is a good syllable for you to calm your mind.
Mm, I see. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. There you go, audience. You have a takeaway right now. And there's, instead of just relying on gems and lots of other, there are these practical tips that true knowledge of Vedic astrology can give us.
And there's been, even cases, I've done even case studies in my studies of, people who change their name, and actually changing your name can sort of open up different energies in your
Right.
chart. Like it's a um, like if you can
Mm.
discard some name that's not working. So for those people who feel the need to maybe change their name for whatever reason, it's a new phase in life, or they want to let go of something in their past and they'd like just a different identity change. You could even see in somebody's chart whether they change their name or not.
Wow.
If it's yeah, so it's maybe in like saying I want a new fresh start, I'm going to change my name, call myself something different. Maybe that would be a good reason to look at one's chart and say, okay, which syllables are going to support me? Which sounds are going to be the best to, make me do whatever it is that I'm wanting to do.
Wonderful. That's awesome. So in a little bit, Kerry, I will take any more questions that may be coming from the audience.
Okay.
But I see how passionate you are about Vedic astrology and guiding people and sharing your knowledge. So Kerry also offers mentorship for those who are curious, like me, to learn more about astrology and how to apply that in your lives. And she does personal readings you can do them from wherever you are in the world now that we have technology that is so supportive. So be sure to go on to Kerry's page, and here it is. Let me show you to Kerry's website, and it'll guide you through. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. But we will be taking questions right now for. Oh, CJ says, I love my last name because I chose it. Wonderful. It's so great to love a name that you have. That's not everybody loves their name, so that's wonderful. Kerry, would you be willing to share with us, when people talk about afflicted moon in the
Can
chart?
you please can you repeat that again, Rima? I'm sorry.
Yeah, would you be willing to share something about an afflicted moon, a moon that is not as supportive or as healthy or negative in the way that many astrologers will say in India? And there are many astrologers that put it in such an it's abrasive way, I think, to people that it can have a negative effect to know that. What would you have to say about that, or how would you guide clients with a difficult moon?
Um, well, I have a difficult moon in my chart. I would have a typical, like if an astrologer looked at my chart, they would say, "Oh God, look at that poor moon.
Huh.
So afflicted. It's debilitated. It's in a hard house. It's in the sixth house. It's so hard."
Hmm.
Um, so, uh, first of all, any kind of affliction or difficulty in somebody's chart, I think it needs to be handled delicately in the sense that um, people begin to feel like they're bad.
Hmm.
If they have an afflicted moon, then they're bad, or that their life is just going to be bad. And so I like to frame things in the way of, okay, so this is a moon under pressure, and really it's asking you to sort of overcome this pressure. I was a little bit ago. I thought about this idea of being a slave, let's say, to your chart,
Yes.
and it was Swami Sri Yukteswar who was the guru of Yogananda. He was an astrologer too, and he wrote a nice book called Science of Light, I believe. Uh, that might be the wrong title. Sorry if it is, but it's in that book, he said, he's saying this is the whole point of this is to transcend who you think you are.
Hmm. Right.
And so how I would counsel somebody and a afflicted moon, which in ways, because the moon is does reflect our state of mind, mental
Yes.
capacities, and that kind of thing. So a really afflicted moon could make somebody have mental, psychological problems. And certainly that's not their, you have to realize that's not their faults per se. They just have to work with that. So the greatest tool that we have to deal with the moon or our minds is meditation. So somebody who had maybe a moon that had a lot of difficult influences on it that made it hard for them to be focused or made it hard for them to have emotional stability, any of those things. Meditation is a good way to calm down the
Yeah.
mind. which is basically the moon. If you think of the moon and how it is just in nature, we see it every day. It's getting bigger, it's getting smaller. It's with this planet, it's with that planet, it's in this sign. So it's variable. Every single day, the moon is different. It's just like our mind. I mean, most of us, if you're like me, you're concentrating on one thing and then you're thinking, oh yeah, I forgot that thing at the store, and oh wow, I was supposed to, and I would rather be taking a hike, and all these things go on in our mind. So
Right.
how do you control that? It's like the barrel of monkeys, right?
Yeah.
So meditation is one of the best remedies, I'd say, when you have an afflicted moon. And when I say meditation, there's a lot of forms of meditation. You can sit down and on a cushion and breathe. That's meditation. There's a lot of different forms. Like
Walking
even
is
martial arts. Martial
oh,
arts is meditation in a way.
yes.
Or walking outside or sitting by the water. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, sitting in a monastery on a, you know.
Right.
So whatever's a meditative practice could help with the moon. The other thing is that Vedic astrology has a lot of different remedial measures traditionally. And one of the chief ones was what you mentioned, the gemstones. So
Mm-hmm.
like the moonstone is considered one of the secondary gems for the moon. The primary gem is a pearl.
Okay.
So that's something that people will do, is they'll buy a gemstone to sort of strengthen that planet.
Does it really
Um,
work? I mean, if you were to just tell us in short, how strongly do you feel about that?
mm, that's a good question. I think it works to some extent. Part of the idea is that you have to have these very quality gemstones for these, that the planetary vibrations are transmitted through these very high quality gemstones. So
I think
there's a whole set
right.
of.
Yeah, and here's what I find: like the error that people make is they believe that that's going to change their destiny. That's going to change
Yeah.
everything because we're looking at what I call the external locus of control, so that I don't have to do anything and take responsibility. And yeah, that's where I think just using it as a support to do more of your work, correct, is
Yes, and well, let's touch on that idea of magic pills.
yeah,
Like if I wear this gem, then all my troubles will go away. Oh my
right.
God, I don't know about that.
People
But I
that
like your idea of,
easily,
it's like a supplement. When we take vitamin C or vitamin D,
right,
we don't expect vitamin C to make us completely a healthy person. It's a supportive thing to our health, right? So
right,
the gemstone idea is supportive to whatever we may be trying to do in our life, but it's definitely not going to fix everything right away when you put that gemstone on. You certainly have to make some effort. And I think that's something that I encourage people to do. Remedial that buying diamond takes effort because you've worked all that time to earn the money to get the diamond and things like that. Um, but like what I think is one of the most powerful remedial measures is mantra practice.
yes,
So mantras are a series of words and syllables that have meaning, and the whole idea of prescribing a mantra for a certain chart is a whole world in itself of study.
right,
But just for those who aren't familiar with mantras, I guess it's sort of become an English word at this point. We think of mantra as being a phrase that's repeated over and over again. So there's a lot of mantras in Sanskrit language. But really, you could make your own mantra with your own intention in your own language to if that made more sense to you. But a lot of people have a lot of success with getting a Sanskrit mantra and not even really understanding it. But as long as you're pronouncing it correctly, the idea is that those energies and the sound vibrations will be supporting or altering the planets or your chart. So
right.
I like to come up with creative remedies too. There's a lot of traditional Vedic remedies that really don't make sense in America, like the
Mm.
idea of donating a cow, or
I was just going to talk about, yeah, that's the first thing that will come to mind.
you
Yes.
know, that's actually, there's places on the internet now where you can go buy livestock and for donation to, people, which is great. But I like to just come up with remedies on an individual basis when I'm talking with somebody. I'd like to co-create a way to create that remedial energy. So, for
And
example, I have a very hard moon in my chart. It's very it's in a tough place. So
Mhm.
on Mondays, I call my mother because that's the moon day. It's one of my remedies that I've come up with to say, this moon under pressure that's in my chart.
Right. Right.
It doesn't even reflect. And my mom was a great person. She was the best mom ever. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So I'm probably more
Right.
dangerous to my mother than she than she
Oh,
is to me. So
you
so
are
that
blessed.
so I come up with these remedies. On Mondays I'll do these things. And if I can't contact my mom because she's traveling or something, I'll contact another mom, somebody else who's a
Oh,
mom, just to give that sort of a
right.
bowing to the mother.
And here's what
you know
my guru, he's so amazing. Like he is a chemical engineer who taught astrology to himself. He's in his late 70s, nowhere on the internet, but he would give me practical tips like that. He said, just go and, so as an example for the moon, he would, if it was him, he would say, go and serve women who are in difficult, go to a women's center and support them, or just sit by them, spend time, respect women, mother like women more, practical remedies like that. Or for Jupiter, for example, he would say just use the color yellow more in your life. Donate yellow things because Jupiter is yellow. It helps you increase that Jupiterian energy. So I like the practical tips more than just depending on a gemstone to some magically. And I think you're frozen again, Kerry. So I would also like to share while Kerry comes back. You're back.
Hi, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. In lines of meditation, it's what I see in clients that come for counseling and coaching. I'm constantly working with their mind and with their emotions. And what people don't realize is that all the experiences that we store in our little fragile mind, they stay there and they're constantly eating us up. It's like, putting food in a container and letting it rot there. And when in coaching we open that, Pandora box of hurt and hurtful experiences from the past. I had a client yesterday, and she was amazed. Like she has been wanting to improve her relationship with her daughter for so many years now, and she never thought what she discovered yesterday. It was, some little emotional episode way back in the past that was carrying itself. So I like all the practical remedies that you're mentioning and suggesting over here. I would like the audience to take note of that. Go to astrologers who will give you such practical remedies like Kerry. Instead of going to somebody who will say, this is your life, that's your fate, get a gemstone from me. Many of them are commercial, I find, right?
Yes, I get this story from a lot of actually Indian people because I say, well, why are you calling me? I mean, you live in India. Certainly you could find an astrologer there. And I think there's probably a lot of good astrologers in India. But what the feedback I get is, well, a lot of the astrologers here just want to sell you gemstones. So no matter what your chart is, you're walking away with a blue sapphire or a yellow sapphire. And
Yeah.
for that reason, I don't sell gemstones. I would just refer somebody if they really wanted one to go find one somewhere else.
Right.
Um, but I mean, there's so many ways we could do remedies. There's each planet has foods and grains and activities, and I mean, there's so many things that you could do to try to work with those planetary energies. Let's say, for
Right.
example, that you're in a Jupiter period in your Vimshotri Dasha, and that you have Jupiter is the ruler of your career in your chart. Wouldn't it be a great idea to try to boost that Jupiter a little bit somehow? And maybe it would help elevate your career some. So you could get a yellow sapphire for that. Or you could decide to visit temples more because Jupiter rules temples. You could do something on Thursdays because that's Jupiter's day. Things like that. And I like to come up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it's fun to create with somebody, practical things that they could try to do to work with their planet's energy.
Here's what he would tell me. Doing all of that you just mentioned is just so great. It's so powerful. He said, not because it will change your combinations. It will not alter the planets, but it'll alter how you feel within to be able to, it's just like building that immunity to be able to fight off, have the resistance for all the weathers of your life that are coming your way.
I love that analogy, Rima, with trying to use it to build your immunity. I think that's a great analogy. It's very, very perfect.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Internal locus of control is the biggest thing that we have in psychology that psychology has given me to learn. All the changes we want have to be made inside.
Yes. And, sometimes when working with somebody in their chart, maybe they're focusing on why is this relationship with my husband difficult, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And partly I can see that it's difficult because they're sabotaging themselves.
Right. Yes.
And that ultimately we can't do anything else to change any other person. The only power we have really is to try to make steps within ourselves.
Right. Yes.
And so if we can zero in on what are the most important steps to make right now to get past whatever barrier you may feel that you have, that's what astrology is for.
Wonderful, Kerry. Thank you so much. You shared such amazing information, very enlightening, very insightful, and very encouraging, I would say. To many of us, I'm sure that those in the audience have received a whole new world and insight to astrology, to Indian Vedic astrology. And Kerry is such an amazing astrologer. I love your energy, Kerry. You're so soothing and calming to a person like me who's constantly always wanting to do. And I remember the first time I took consultation with you, I did not even let you talk enough, and I would jump from there to there to there. So I love your just very, very soothing, calming energy. Kerry has a unique way of all the other astrologers, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, would just go to a chart and very technically dissect it, is how I say it. But Kerry is wonderful at, personally, I like getting the reasons of why this combination or why this is occurring in this time of my life. It can be different for other people, but I like getting that understanding from you, Kerry, when I was doing consultation, being your client, and all the encouraging guidance that you've given me. Check out Kerry's page here, everybody, for consultations, for learning astrology. There's a lot of information. She does monthly forecasts as well, based on the transiting planets in the sky and how that is going to influence you based on your rising sign, not your sun sign, your rising sign. And if you want more information, just get in touch with Kerry and do a personal consultation with her. Are there any other questions that anybody has? Nupur says, I like creating with someone with some practical ways. Yeah, Nupur, Kerry is a great astrologer for that. She's going to give you some practical tips for solutions for your difficulties. And thank you for sharing, says CJ. Thank you all the audience and everybody who's here, who has heard us for the interview who was here with your questions as well. Kerry, is there anything that you'd like to share with us as I want to bring you back on this platform. Let's do more of these interviews as we find time.
Sure. We can do specific topics too. Maybe check in with your audience and see what people want to hear about, and then we can tailor it to that.
Right. So all of you who are here online right now, please tell us, what about astrology would you like to learn more? What ignites your curiosity with astrology? And we can bring you more of that, more of this interview in the coming months. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rima. Thank you. It was really nice talking with you as always.
Yeah, my gratitude for you being here. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.